let's try this for a fourth time. After the first 3 times didn't go quite as planned. This video was actually being planned for a while though. I wanted to talk about a number of topics, look at the phase 2 of the residence visa, which actually starts in less than 4 weeks, which is kind of scary. I'm going to look at what the event that was planned next week for down in Wellington. The fairly has been postponed due to going to red. And I also want to have a look at the tertiary dependent student visa, which the Minister announced back in December, but which seems to have been forgotten now with the rollout date of 10 Jan missed, and then in January also missed, and no communication whatsoever as to what is going on. That was what was planned. And then the Prime Minister announced today her 5-step plan to opening the MIQ. So we're going to focus on that, and we will come back to the other topics in a later video, but this right now I think is definitely the biggest news of the week. My name is Aaron Hunt. I'm a partner here at the law firm Stace Hammond here in Auckland, New Zealand, where I head up the immigration team. It is, I've lost track of time, it has so many hours it's becoming a bit of a blur, but it is 5:15 on Thursday, 3rd of February 2022. As always, this is not legal advice, this is just our commentary about immigration here in New Zealand. Looking for legal advice, go to our website, email us, links down below in the description, the usual stuff. As always, please like, share this video, comment on it, forward it, post it, send it by fax, however you want to sort of get it out to other people out there. It really does help us get the message out and hopefully helps your friends to maybe learn something about how we see this announcement today. And it is a big announcement. Now, this morning I listened to the Prime Minister give her speech, taking notes about what she said and the words she used. Now, I'm a lawyer, she's a politician, it's always about the actual words we use. It's so much defined by that. But fortunately, despite my mad scribblings, the COVID-19 and the immigration websites both provided actually some pretty decent breakdowns of what she was talking about. Still some details missing, we're going to cover that later in this video, but it still wasn't bad, and probably more than we actually expected, I think, on this first day. We will quickly go through the 5 stages she mentioned. We'll give a definition as to one of the terms she uses. We'll look at a few of the issues that we sort of, either there's an issue there or perhaps needs more detail as to how it's going to work. I'll give some thoughts about MIQ in general, and then for the sake of it, I'm going to put a funny video in because this is going to be a serious video, and I think by the end of it, we're going to need a bit of whimsy. So, step 1. First of all, the way that the Prime Minister does dates. Now, she will give you a date, and it's actually it's 11:59 p.m. on that day. So it is the final minute of that day that this takes effect, and then it's the next day. So when she says 11:59 p.m. on 27th of February, I'm saying 28th of February because in actual fact that's what it means. It's kind of like saying something costs $9.99. It's $10. Let's just cut to the chase. It's $10. So here, when she has a date, I would say the day after because that's generally how they're calculating these days. So step 1 on February 28th, the entire day, not the minute before. Fully vaccinated New Zealand citizens and residents and other eligible travellers under current border settings, we'll cover that later, can travel to New Zealand from Australia and self-isolate, no need for MIQ. So that is step 1. Step 2, on 14th of March, we have actually a few different groups and announcements for that day. First thing is that those people in step 1, so those citizens, residents and the other eligible travellers under current border settings, can travel to New Zealand from anywhere in the world as long as they're fully vaccinated and they self-isolate on arrival. And of course there's the usual testing before you leave. Those tests and that will still be in place throughout this entire period. Working holiday schemes will restart from 14th of March on a rolling basis. It's not going to be completely open, it will be set a few countries perhaps or a few numbers at a time. And the other change is we have an other critical worker allowance here where if you are an other critical worker you can apply for a visa to come to the country. You must, well, what they're doing here, they're reducing it from a requirement of being earned, of turning 2 times median salary to 1.5 times median salary, which is a drop there. But more importantly, they are removing the need to show that the skills you're bringing are not readily obtainable in New Zealand. So INZ will no longer require applicants to be godlike with supernatural powers, which seems to be the current requirements for other critical workers. Instead, it will just be based on that 1.5 times median salary. What they don't cover here is whether this is going to impact their ability to apply for the one-off residence visa, because currently if you're coming in on the other critical worker, you are being given a CPVV with the right to work of more than 6 months, which means you can apply under the S6, the residence visa. So that might impact that. We have to wait and see officially how that's going to work. Otherwise, it's going to be a really easy way to get residence if you are a higher earner. Okay, from April 13th, step 3, there are again several groups. Firstly, and hoorah, finally there's some sort of movement on this area. Temporary visa holders currently outside New Zealand who have a valid visa can enter as long as they still meet their visa requirements. So if you are on a post-study work visa and you have the lucky timing in that your visa will still be valid on April 13th, you can come into the country on that visa. Same if you have a essential skills work visa or a talent accredited employer visa, you can again come into the country on that visa on the basis that you still hold that job. So that's a requirement of your visa. You still have that job. Employers are like, yep, we need you, which is likely because we have so few staff in this country right now. We're crying out for employees. That's a chance to come in. So there's no allowance here, no information about those of you who have unfortunately had your visas expire while you're offshore. There's nothing in here for you. That is still an issue that they must deal with. But at least for those of you who will still have a visa in place in April 13th, you have a chance to come in and actually use it, get back on shore, then quickly apply for another visa. Also on April 13th, we have 5,000 students entering to New Zealand for semester 2. We'll cover that in our issues section later. And there'll also be an extension to those who fall under the other job type, specific exceptions or government approved programs under H5 that will be extended and fall under there as well. Step 4. Now this is from July 2022, but they did say that was the last sort of month. It may come forward prior to that. I expect if we have a full-on Omicron outbreak and it's everywhere, they'll bring this forward. But this is going to basically be an allowance to enter with no MIQ for Australian citizens, residents and other foreign nationals coming from Australia who weren't included under Step 1. Visa waiver countries, as I suggested in previous videos, they were going to be one of the first ones we open up to because it's an easy task for immigration just to allow them to come in because they get a visa on arrival and they're coming from countries where they're going to bring in money, that's the hope from the government, to pay for tourism, for that sort of thing. So visa waiver countries is in there as well, as are those who hold things like an APEC card to allow entry to the country. As a business person, you also should also fall under that category as well. And also here is the holders of an accredited employer work visa, still the worst name for a visa ever, the AEWV. It just doesn't roll off tongue nicely. That visa comes out actually in July. That's a replacement of the Essential Skills Work Visa and several others. And holders of that will be able to come in on that visa if we are waiting until July to open up then. But this rolls forward earlier than that, then that won't matter because that visa won't be available at that point. And then step 5, from October 2022, the border opens for all New Zealand visa holders, including visitor and student visas, unless the visa is closed or paused. Now, what's not clear here is whether that means they're going to open the border, or it's going to be when they start doing applications, or applications come before that, or there's not clarity there as to when they actually start providing new visas for those who want a new visa and a student or a visitor visa. We do think that those of you who have been granted or offered a GVV, a general visitor visa, when you've applied for a partnership visa and they've said to you that you're not quite at the level to show genuine and stable, this is when we think you'll get that GVV, is in that October allowance, or around then, or from that point they'll start granting those visas and you can use them. But that's when we think it's going to be. Now, there was the one definition, one term that to define, and that was the other eligible travellers under current border settings, which mentions in Step 1 and Step 2. And this means citizens, residents, Australian citizens and residents who live in New Zealand, people with border exceptions, and partnered and dependent children of citizens and residents. There's also an allowance there for parents of a dependent child who is a citizen or resident, but we're not quite sure as to what kind of visa they would hold to fall under that. It'd be an obscure sort of situation, but that's in there as well. But it's good to get a definition for that, because in the past we've heard the minister use that term and we've sort of looked at each other and said, well, what does that mean? Who are the eligible ones? And now we've at least been told these are the eligible visa holders. Now, forgetting the whole risk that opening things up creates with Omicron, I'm not going to go into that. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, that will push that aside. In regards to migration and to those who are offshore, overall this is some pretty good news. It sets some targets in place. We know what's going to happen. We know when people can start coming home without the hassle of MIQ, the delays, the cost of MIQ, which is ridiculous. We do hope that the government does not do what it did previously, and when we hit step 1, reduce the MIQ spaces. They did that when they opened up the border with Australia. They reduced the numbers, and then we had this, people were going, well, great, that's happening, more spaces are going to free up, and no, they cut the numbers down. So we do hope that they keep the numbers in place at least until step 2 occurs, because when step 2 occurs, that should free up most of the MIQ spaces, because that's going to basically all of the border exceptions, all of the residents, citizens and all that across the world be able to come in. So that should be when MIQ perhaps starts to shrink in size. Now let's have a look at a few of the issues. There aren't many, I will be fair, there's not many issues, at least with what I've seen so far. I'll give a few days thought, think some more, but right now, at first view, there's not many. First one though is in regards to the student allocation, 5,000 people. And with the shambles that we saw with the allocation of nurses' MIQ spaces, or with teachers being granted visas, only a few were granted it, or even actually students in the past, with the 1,000 recently, and they're sort of like, well, what's the process? Do we trust they can do 5,000 visas and do it in a way which is understandable and isn't drawn out and slow? There's no detail yet as to how it's going to be done, whether it be done by the Ministry of Education or by the institutes, or just basically whoever applies first gets the visa. We don't know yet how that's going to work. So we'll need more details, but after seeing them make messes of previous allocations, we're suspect of whether it's going to work or not. Second issue, and this is a big one for me, there is no allowance for separated families. Now, why is the government bringing in or restarting working holiday scheme when families are still divided? That should be the priority, not people on holiday. Let's get the families back together. That just seems like that should be at least in step 2. I don't understand that at all. Number 3 is, well, I'm not going to comment about Omicron. I do want to mention, can we trust the government to ensure that home isolation is going to work? I can trust the vast majority who are going to be coming into this country. Actually, ironically, I would probably trust the work visa holders, the students, the border exceptions, those coming in for separated families, because they're coming here and they know that it is a privilege to be here, and they don't want to make a mistake. They want to stick to the rules, and I have some clients who are so pedantic about sticking to the rules, and I love them for it because it makes my job so much easier. But then we look at those who have busted out of MIQ, and typically they're New Zealand citizens. Which I am one, and it's sort of kind of embarrassing that we're the ones who break those rules. And then we have people like, the DJ, we have athletes who are breaking, who are coming in, cricketers coming in who are breaking isolation, and nothing really happened. Hit the media, there was comments made, I made a few comments myself, and then nothing. There was no punishment, no penalty, deliberately flouting the rules, but nothing. Can we trust the government to enforce home isolation? No, I can't see them doing that. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. And then finally, the one issue I have here, it's not directly MIQ related, well, actually not MIQ related at all, but it was a note we saw in step 4 which does concern me regarding the, again, horribly named AEWV. And it states, the AEWV will mainly be limited to roles that pay above the New Zealand median wage. More information will be available soon. Is this in relation just to step 4, or I think more likely this is just sort of a heads up, or perhaps almost a leak of information that the plan is not to grant work visas to those who earn at or below median wage. This wasn't just median wage, it was above median wage. So after the mess we saw in 2020, 2021 with the 6-month visa for those who were lower paid, are we going back to that situation where we, as a country with mass need for employment, are going to start saying to these guys, yeah, sorry, but you don't get a visa because we don't pay you enough? That's concerning. So I'm going to have a chat to my contacts in immigration and in Parliament and probably a few trade unions, and just make them aware of this, because if that is true, and that's the way it's worded here, that really does concern me about the future for employers here who won't be able to retain staff for more than, well, I don't know, because if you can't get an AWV, if you earn at or less than $27 an hour, actually that should be $27.78. I think it's going to 26 going to go to 27.76 is what it should be going to. It should go to last month actually. Again, the government's sort of missed their requirements there. That's kind of concerning that you could be earning $27 an hour and you won't be eligible for an AEWV unless you're in one of the jobs they think that you should be earning in. So that's a concern there. But that is just a quick breakdown about today's announcements. We'll put links in for the COVID-19 and the INZ pages that relate to this. There's a lot of information in there, a lot of links, and also information about how you'll be doing home isolation. I haven't want to cover those details there. One thing to note is that on arrival you'll be given 3 rapid tests, one for the start, one for the unit, and one as a spare. Other than that, it should basically be you go to a certain house, you stay there, you see nobody. Yeah, that's sort of how it's going to work. We do want to get a video up about the possible changes to the residence visa 2021 in the next week or so, depending on how our workload is. Our workload is pretty high. We do have a couple of spaces left for those, for clients. We're looking to get help with their residence visa come 1st of March, so please get in contact with us if we can help you out. Now to all of you, all of those of you who will be coming home soon, thanks to these changes, coming back to your families, back to your country, back to your jobs, welcome home, we've missed you. To everybody else out there, as we head into hopefully what will be the final swan song of MIQ, kia kaha and stay safe. Now here's a video of my drone and some seagulls.